We're here to talk about some real progress that has been made in this city in terms of saving lives. I want to just give you a little perspective that for years and years in this city, we lost hundreds of people a year to traffic crashes. Hundreds of lives lost every single year. Many years we had 4,000 or more people seriously injured on top of that. And I think at times there was a sense that this was a problem that was so difficult, so complicated in such a busy city that maybe there was nothing that could be done. But we believed there was something that could be done. We believed that we could change these dynamics fundamentally. We believed we could turn the tide if we were aggressive enough, if we were creative enough, if we put enough resources into play, if we got enough agencies working together, that we could do something very different and that it would have a big impact. We believed that the Vision Zero philosophy was right. We believed it could be applied, not in a small city or in a foreign country, but right here in the busiest, largest city in the United States of America. We believed that the idea was the right idea. And if it was applied energetically and forcefully, it would make a huge difference. But that was theory. That was theory when we talked about it in 2013. It was theory when we first announced the program early last year. We had to go through a year to see if we could take this vision and make it real. Because we found those numbers that I mentioned a moment ago fundamentally unacceptable. We didn't believe that people in this city should have to live with that reality. So in 2013, I promised that we would do something very different and that we would take Vision Zero and make it a reality. Last February 2014, we announced the Vision Zero Action Plan. Citywide effort, including more than half a dozen city agencies working in concert with a single purpose. Something I'm very proud of here and proud of the people of this administration is that these agencies really did get on the same page excuse me, and work together for a common goal. The idea was we could prevent traffic fatalities in a way previously unprecedented, unknown, that we could go somewhere that this city had not gone before. The progress is now obvious. The facts are in. We have a record that proves the theory was right. 2014 was the safest year for New York City pedestrians since modern records were first taken in 1910. Let's get this right. Since 1910, 105 years ago, this was the safest year for New York City pedestrians. It's an astounding amount of progress that was made in so short a period of time. 134 pedestrian deaths in 2014. That is 134 too many. That's something we're going to keep working on each and every year. But 134 pedestrian deaths in 2014, down from 180 in 2013. Look at that juxtaposition right there. 134 in 2014 versus 180 in 2013. 250 total traffic fatalities in 2014 compared to 293 in 2013. Again, this is rapid progress. Those statistics indicate real lives, real people, real families who are walking the streets today, people who have a better life because these policies worked. I want to say this has been an extraordinary group effort to get to this point. Success has many fathers and mothers. The elected officials, you're going to hear from some elected officials here, played an important role in this effort. The work done in Albany, the work done in the City Council to take these ideas and make them a reality and to do it so rapidly was essential to this success. The different agencies obviously played a crucial role. You're going to hear from Commissioner Polly Trottenberg in terms of what the Department of transportation did, particularly in terms of the kind of redesign that we just saw a few moments ago and how crucial it is. But I have to really thank as well Chief Tom Chan of the NYPD, who runs the Transportation Bureau at the NYPD, because NYPD embraced this mission energetically, and it made a huge, huge difference. I remember, Chief, you'll appreciate this, I remember one day one of my staffers said that she had been in a cab not long after we made the original announcement, and the cab was pulled over by a police officer. And what had happened is the cab driver had made an illegal turn and not yielded to pedestrians. And the officer explained that things were different now, that Vision Zero is in place, and that these type of things were going to be assertively and energetically enforced. And my staff person was so impressed, not only that the action took place, but the officer was explaining to the cab driver that things were going to be different and expect a lot more of that. And what NYPD did in 2014 made a huge difference, and thank you for your leadership. The advocates, the community leaders, the advocates on these issues, the families who tragically lost loved ones and turned that pain into action, they played a crucial role in these achievements. I want to thank Families for Safe Streets, and I want to thank Paul Steely-White, who's here with us, who I've known a long time and played a really crucial role in getting these ideas forward as Executive Director of Transportation Alternatives. So everyone contributed to getting us to a point where we now have recognized and documented progress. Now, what were the building blocks? Well, number one, the speed cameras in the school zones played a crucial role. Over 40 speed cameras were activated in school zones in the year 2014. Now, here's an astounding statistic. There has been an initial study done of what the impact of those speed cameras was around our schools. And the study of 19 of these locations found a 59% drop in speeding, 59% reduction in speeding near these schools for the month September through December 2014. The speed cameras are rapidly changing people's behavior, and that means our children are safer. The second factor, a reduction in the speed limit to 25 miles per hour, and the signage that's helping people know of this new development. Again, this is the speed limit for many parts, but not all parts of the city. That made a huge impact on behavior, and obviously the reduction in speed meant that, thank God, people could react differently, and a lot of accidents were averted or had less negative consequences. Those kind of changes got a lot of attention, and they deserved a lot of attention. But some of the things that got less attention made a huge difference as well. And the third factor is what you saw just a few minutes ago, the street redesigns and improvements which make things safer for pedestrians and drivers alike. I'm announcing today that over 50 major street and intersection redesigns have been completed now as a result of the initiative we started less than a year ago. These were focused on some of the most problematic locations in the city. Again, credit goes to Polly and her team, the hard work they did, and they did it really quickly. They set some time records here in the process, but getting 50 major redesigns done. You saw at the intersection outside, and you saw the before and after pictures. I don't know if they still have them up here, but I think people got a good look at them. That was a wide open situation. A lot of folks in the community were really uncomfortable with it. A lot of the business folks and community leaders have really raised their concern about this. Wide open, where you had a bunch of different streets converging. There weren't dividers between the lanes going each way. There wasn't a lot of definition, and that led to more and more accidents. What you saw now, and which was done in record time, is very clear definition in terms of where vehicles are supposed to go, how and when. That changes everything. Let me go through some of the details of what was achieved in this very extraordinary physical effort. 35 intersections redesigned, more than triple the number that had been done in 2013. 40 5 new leading pedestrian intervals. That's when pedestrians are given the opportunity to walk before the green light. Triple the number of 2013. 400 speed bumps. That's more than 100 additional speed bumps that were created in 2013. And 27 arterial slow zones. That's both lower speeds that were created and more enforcement. These were areas where there had been a lot of problems and more enforcement was applied. East Tremont Avenue, as you saw right here, it had been a very troubled street. There was a long history of a number of crashes. Studies showed that 85% of vehicles drove above the speed limit typically. But now there's safety islands, ramps, neck downs, crosswalks. You got every term in the book here, Paul. And applying all of these tools, and Polly will talk about in more detail, it's creating some order and some calm and slower speeds and more chance for everyone to get it right. One of the folks who knew a lot about this because he saw it is Juan Clark. And Juan, I think it's 15 years you've owned the store. 15 years Juan has owned Clark & Son signs. You saw it outside there, and he saw a sign store with a big window. And sadly, out that window, he saw a lot of crashes because the situation in that street was so poorly designed. And sometimes he had to run out and help people who were part of those crashes, run out with a fire extinguisher and try and help others. And then a few years ago, literally a car crashed into his store. And very, very sadly, the driver died. So for Juan to see what had obviously been a broken situation finally addressed by the city gave him a real sense that something was happening that would make people safer. I want to thank you, Juan, for having helped all those people over the years and for being one of the people who called for these changes that are being achieved. And we'd like you to see no more crashes. That's our goal. Going forward, we have a lot more to do. The next part of the plan is to improve 50 additional locations in all 5 boroughs. One crucial example, Queens Boulevard. I don't need to tell anyone in this room the history of Queens Boulevard. This probably the most notorious in this city in terms of pedestrian deaths. We're going to bring Queens Boulevard into the 21st century. We're going to make sure it is safe. We're going to work with the community. It'll be a very careful planning process. We're going to work with community residents to redesign key sections to reduce the possibility of any danger to pedestrians and to all others. Commissioner Trottenberg will talk about that and other big changes that you'll be seeing in 2015. We're going to follow the facts. We're going to follow the data. And where we see problem areas, that's where we're going to apply these tools most intensely and keep driving down these numbers and keep saving people's lives. That's the game plan. And I believe fundamentally what you saw in 2014 is just the shape of things to come, because that was just a beginning. We had a new team and a new plan, an extraordinarily energetic group of people who found a way to make that plan come to life quickly. But the plan just got started, and we already saw this kind of impact. We believe there's a lot more where that came from, and that's what you're going to see acted on in 2015. Just a word in Spanish. Me complace anunciar que hemos completado más de 50 proyectos de rediseño de calles e intersecciones en el primer año del Plan Visión Cero. Hacer las calles más seguras para peatones, conductores y ciclistas seguirá siendo una de nuestras principales prioridades. With that, a woman deserves a lot of credit for having brought Vision Zero to life, and her leadership, which was incessant and focused, is one of the reasons why you see this extraordinary success. Our Transportation Commissioner, Polly Trottenberg. You can clap for her, people.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for your leadership on Vision Zero. I was recalling that it was almost exactly 1 year ago that I joined you and Commissioner Bratton. I was not actually even officially a commissioner then, to kick off Vision Zero, and I have to say, on behalf of the Department of Transportation, it's been an extraordinary year. Earlier today, we got to be out on East Tremont Avenue, and it's really been one of our very exciting street safety improvement projects. It had one of the highest crash rates in the Bronx, and we heard, as the mayor mentioned, a lot of interest from the community in how we could make those streets and those intersections safer. We work very closely with the local businesses, the Westchester Square Business Improvement District, and together we designed some real street safety improvements. And as you saw, we constructed 5 new pedestrian islands, shortened and added crosswalks, built new pedestrian ramps, installed left turn lanes, and standardized the moving lanes. The work has now made it safer for pedestrians to cross, for drivers to turn. It's helped calm traffic, and it's already, I think, helping businesses do better. More customers want to walk around the neighborhood and come shop. And this is one of, as the mayor mentioned, this is one of over 50 Vision Zero street improvement projects that New York City DOT completed in 2014. We did projects in all 5 boroughs, starting East Tremont here, but we have posters of some of the other ones: Northern Boulevard in Queens, Bushwick Ave in Brooklyn, Richmond Ave in Staten Island, Broadway and 96th Street in Upper Manhattan. And as you heard from the mayor, we've accomplished more than ever before, which has led to safer streets for all New Yorkers, and we are very proud that we've achieved the lowest pedestrian fatality number since the city started keeping records. And also, thanks to the mayor's leadership, as he mentioned, we had a great victory up in Albany, getting the city's default speed limit lowered from 30 to 25. And we engaged in a very robust public education campaign to make sure New Yorkers know about it. And one interesting thing, we conducted polling before we implemented the change to see if New Yorkers knew when the default speed limit was 30. About 28% knew. We polled after our education campaign, 60% knew that the new speed limit had gone down to 25. So we broke through. So 2014 was a big year for us, but we are also very excited about what we're going to be doing in 2015. We're about to kick off a big year of new safety projects, and as the mayor mentioned, we're going to get started. We're going to be all over the city, but a couple we're going to kick off right away: Queens Boulevard and Linden Boulevard in Brooklyn. We're also going to be here in the Bronx doing a major intersection redesign at Jackson and Westchester Avenues. We just talked to the community board about that. We're going to be implementing a road diet up on Amsterdam Ave on the Upper West Side, and improving bike infrastructure on Clove Road in Staten Island. And that's just a sneak peek. We're going to be rolling out many, many more projects in the months to come. I, too, want to say what a great collaborative effort this has been, working with our agency partners like Chief Chan and Commissioner Yoshi of the TLC, the many elected leaders we've had all over the city, and, of course, the advocates, communities, and family for safe streets. Their relentless advocacy has really been the wind in our sails this year. I just have to take a minute to thank the amazing team at New York City DOT. A lot of them are here today. Deputy Commissioner Ryan Russo, Elijah Ferrari, Josh Benson, Sean Quinn, Anne-Marie Doherty, Naeem Rashid, and the project manager for the project you saw today, Julio Palero. We could not have gotten this work done without the very talented men and women at our agency. So we're very proud of the work we've done in 2014 and looking forward to all the work we're going to do this year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Again, to get so much to happen so quickly, particularly the actions in Albany at the City Council, took a lot of political leadership. And the public advocate was an energetic participant and a real key element in our efforts to get to the kind of consensus that could lead to this action. Our public advocate, Tish James.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to commend Mayor de Blasio and Transportation Commissioner Trottenberg's progress, as well as Chief Chan and all of my colleagues in government and all the advocates who are here today, in making our streets safer through the Vision Zero initiative. As most of you know, as a former city council member and as a public advocate, I've been very supportive of bike lanes, as well as the bike share program. I've lobbied for mass transit subsidies. I've advocated for an increased capital budget for plazas and pedestrian plazas and for play streets, and also for countdown clocks, as well as engineering the streets in the city of New York. I want to thank the mayor for focusing on some major corridors in my former council district, such as Atlantic Avenue and Kent Avenue, a protected bike lane on Lafayette Avenue, and And as a whole, we see over 50 major street redesigns that heavily incorporate both pedestrian and bike traffic, as well as expand the successful slow zone designation. And they also include widening sidewalks, protected bike lanes, slow zones, and more narrow crossing at dangerous intersections. Last year was our city's safest streets for pedestrians, with a significant drop in vehicular deaths. And 2015 will be even safer as our city prioritizes our most dangerous intersections and corridors. I want to coin a phrase from Families for Safe Streets and thank the mayor and the commissioner for transforming a boulevard of death into a boulevard of life. Traffic fatalities are down 15% from 2013, and pedestrian fatalities are down 27%. And this is because urban planners, engineers, advocates, and experts who have observed that what works in other major cities have always been the driving force behind New York's Vision Zero program. Together, we can eliminate traffic deaths and traffic-related injuries and improve street safety in every neighborhood and throughout every borough by basically changing the rules of the road. I again want to thank Mayor de Blasio, Transportation Commissioner, Commissioner Trottenberg. I also want to thank Families for Safe Streets for their advocacy, for their bravery, and for their leadership in the face of tragic loss, as well as Transportation Alternatives for leading the way. Thank you.
Thank you. We went to Albany, and we knew, given the history, that it would not be easy to achieve what we needed to, but we also knew it was literally a matter of life and death. And as in so many other situations where the topic was Albany, I turned to my good friend, Assemblymember Luis Sepulveda, both for advice and to help lead the charge. And he's one of the people who really achieved those great victories in Albany for us. Assemblymember Luis Sepulveda.
He's very adept at making me look taller. But, you know, when I first met the mayor, we discussed future endeavors. One of the things that he talked about immediately was his Vision Zero plan. And I thought, you know, that's a great idea. It's ambitious, but it's a great idea. And right away from the very beginning, he went up to Albany, and his staff members, his advocates, went up there, and we discussed the bill, and there was a battle, but we got it done. And to see the results, the immediate result, is an amazing testament to the work of the mayor, the commissioner, the advocates, and members, and my colleagues in government. It's a wonderful thing that I hope we expand even more throughout the city. It's a great return on your investment. It's securing lives, and I only hope that we can do more of it in the city. And we'll be there to support the mayor and the advocates in their endeavor to make the cities of New York, for pedestrians and drivers, a lot safer in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. In the City Council, again, we got tremendous support, and this was one of the linchpins to getting so much to work. And one of the folks in the City Council knows the most about transportation and certainly understands for a community center like where we were just outside here on East Tremont, what an impact it makes on everyday lives of people to get this right. He's been a great friend, Councilmember Jimmy Vaca.
Thank you. I first want to welcome you all to my district. Westchester Square is an important part of the East Bronx. I have to tell you that there's not a day that goes by as councilman or before that as district manager for the community board. There's not a day that goes by that someone does not stop me asking for a speed bump, for a four-way stop sign, for a traffic light. There's not a day that goes by. And what we've seen in the past year is a commitment to do something and to do it relatively quickly and get things done. We have too many people in this city who are part of the problem rather than part of the solution. Too many people are going too fast on the streets, driving too fast. They're scaring pedestrians. And if you're a motorist that wants to obey the speed limit, it's often difficult. I have to tell you, I drive. I'm a slow driver. People who know me know I go nowhere fast, but I do want you to know that I do want you to know that the least of the problems with my driving is that I obey the speed limit. But I'm tired of having people beeping their horns behind me, and I'm basically going to let them know, because I know a lot of people in this neighborhood. I probably know those who are beeping their horns when they're behind me. I resent it. People have to go slower, and they have to understand. It's a big job in the city to get people to look at their speedometers. I want people when they drive in this city to look at their speedometers, because that's what I meant when I said that they were part of the problem. And if they realize that it's not somebody else that they have to complain about, that it's themselves that they have to look at, they have to look in the mirror, then that realization, coupled with what we can do at the city level, and the commissioner and the mayor on Vision Zero, I have fully supported it because it was long overdue. We did not think we could do what we've done. We can do more. And if it takes a speed bump on every block in this city, I'm committed to get that done, because when it comes to life and when it comes to health, there can't be a second-guessing process. There has to be an upfront commitment. And I think that I know we see that now, and we're willing to do more work going forth. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And some of the greatest energy for these changes has been at the grassroots. We've heard from civic organizations, block associations. We've certainly heard from community boards. I think we have one or more representatives of Community Board 10 here. No, I thought so. Okay, there you go. Excellent, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much. And want to thank you for the support and the energy and the focus. We also heard, in this instance, the intersection that you just saw, from the Westchester Square bid, which is an energetic organization. And if you know the Westchester Square bid, they have strong opinions, and I say that as a compliment. So I want you to hear from the folks who really helped lead the charge locally for the changes you just saw. Lisa Soren, Executive Director of the Westchester Square bid. Welcome.
Thank you for that. And I think it's the voice of the community and the businesses that really help communicate the issues to the city. And I really do have to thank DOT and actually do a special shout out to the local commissioner, Connie Moran, because when we have needed something, they are quick to respond. So I thank you for that, Commissioner. I will say, as it relates to Silver Street, it was something that was desperately needed. We went before the community board and the city. The response was immediate. What the result is for this community with Vision Zero and the public streets retrofitting is the fact that now the pedestrians can get off the bus safely. And that was an issue for the businesses on the west end of the bid, because people were afraid to get off the bus or stop their car for fear that there were no crosswalks. Now I have businesses telling me, thanks to these changes, they have higher foot traffic. And it's these partnerships, as the Westchester Square bid, that we want to see them grow. The communication is amazing with the city. I thank you, Commissioner, and the Mayor. I look forward to using this as a stepping stone for many more projects that they're going to be hearing from, and also to our councilmen, to showcase what we can do, use us as an example for all the other bids in the area and across the city. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to do on-topic questions followed by off-topic. Yes.
If you can elaborate, perhaps that Commissioner can, on what you're planning on doing on Washington Underhill and on Queens Boulevard.
Okay, I'll let the Commissioner elaborate on both.
Well, as I mentioned, on Queens Boulevard, we're going to be kicking off a process of community engagement shortly, in the next month or so. And just so you all know, we're going to be taking a very expansive look at what we can do there. Everything is on the table. You know, as the mayor has mentioned, this is where we really want to showcase some very innovative ideas. Same thing Underhill. One signature of all the work we've done here is that we really, as you've heard today, we really try and work closely with the community. We bring some of our ideas to the table, but we want to hear their ideas as well. And they have helped us in every case, I think, refine and really make the projects as good as they can be. But we are going to look to be as creative and aggressive as we can this year.
What are some of your ideas?
Well, again, I mean, you can see there's some of these immediate pedestrian-type improvements, you know, particularly when you look at something, a big boulevard like Queens Boulevard. Obviously, I think it's 12. In some places it goes from 10, 12, 14 lanes of traffic. You know, we're looking at all kinds of things. Bike lanes are on the table, doing massive redesigns of some of the pedestrian infrastructure in the middle. We're always looking at how we can refine signal timing, how we can handle the different places where you have service roads and slip roads. So I think we're going to have a lot of great ideas for that street. Thank you.
Yes, follow on that, you know, I think, and there was a certain attitude, I think, and I think it was just part of the reality of the city, that Queens Boulevard was talked about so often. It was almost talked about as something that couldn't change. Yes, it's a very big, complex situation, but the numbers, the tragedies were so frequent, so painful. And one of the things that we said is we want to address things that have maybe previously seemed intractable or impossible. We want to give them a whole new look and say we're going to find some way to break through. And when you think about the logic, what makes more sense to, get under the hood and figure out a way of doing things that's very different? It might take teaching people a new way of thinking about things, and that's certainly true of the speed limit, for example. It's certainly true of the speed cameras. That's certainly true of some of the redesigns. But will save a number of lives. Then when you say it that way, it's a no-brainer. There's no extent we wouldn't go to the save lives, especially in something that happened year after year after year. So I think what's been so great in this last year is it sort of opened up people's minds and imaginations to what was possible. And then folks like Commissioner Trottenberg and Chief Chan took the ideas and just built upon them rapidly. In a good way, the dam burst, and lots of great ideas started coming forward, and lots of new ways of doing things started to be applied. So Queens Boulevard may be arguably the toughest nut to crack, but we're convinced we can make a huge difference there. On topic, yes.
Mr. Mayor, the pedestrian fatalities in 2007 were 140. 2011 was 142. 2014, 134. Why do you believe 2014's reduction was a result of Vision Zero as opposed to the variances we saw in 2007 and 2011?
Well, I think I'll let Paula go into detail. I think what you saw on the pedestrian side is overwhelming. And the fact that we've seen real changes in behavior. So on the one hand, you have an extraordinarily powerful statistic in terms of the change for pedestrians. Certainly, the overall numbers on traffic fatalities are exceedingly strong in historical perspective. But I think the other thing is you see real behavior changing in real time. In those instances I gave of the study of those camera locations, a 59% reduction in speeding. And that's based on just part of the year when we were able to have an impact. Going into 2015, we're going to have a lot of these measures in place for the whole year and a lot more coming behind it. So we think what we proved in 2014 is how these initial investments could make a big impact. Now we're going to get a much more advantageous dynamic. We're going to have a lot more tools, a lot more quickly applied that we think will take us even farther. Why don't you talk about the historical perspective?
I think we feel convinced that the work we did this year had an effect on the number. It's no question, though, one thing we say about these kind of statistics, they aren't linear. We took a look. One of the things we did as we broke down the data, we looked borough by borough, and we actually saw reductions in every single borough. And we tried to really look at some of the areas where we had targeted our work that had previously been areas, high crash areas, and areas with a lot of, pedestrian fatalities and injuries. As the mayor mentioned, too, in terms of the speed limit, we actually only got that implemented in early November. The speed cameras we've been ratcheting up over the year, and I've been actually really pleased and amazed at the growing awareness, just as I talk to random New Yorkers and I look at our polling data. And I feel, as the mayor said, next year when we implement all our speed cameras, we have 25 miles an hour for the whole year, we're really going to continue to see improvements in the numbers.
Yes, Mr. Mayor or Commissioner, other than the polling data on the 25-mile-an-hour speed limit, how do you know, or is there a way to measure if people are actually going 25 miles an hour? Has traffic really slowed? And where, perhaps, do you see that happen most?
Just one thing I'll say, and I'll turn to the Commissioner. Again, polling data is very interesting and very powerful. The evidence in terms of the impact on cameras and that initial study, very, very powerful. The recognition of what Vision Zero is, what it means, I'm struck in all of my connection to people all over the city how much it has registered with people. I think the advocates and the families had a huge role in that. Sometimes you have an historical moment where something crystallizes, and I think people in the city got sick of these crashes and they got sick of the loss of life, and they believed it was time for a change, and that really added to the energy with which the message got transmitted. I also think our elected officials, having started as a city council member and a school board member myself, one thing I can say is a lot of elected officials are very good at staying connected to the people they serve and knowing what the feelings are, and I've talked to a lot of elected officials, and the response has been there's a lot of awareness and a lot of acceptance that this was necessary. And that's been striking to me. So that's just some examples. Let me let the Commissioner go farther.
I mean, I'll give you two answers to that. I mean, one, in addition to polling data, again, as the mayor mentioned, we have data we actually get from our speed cameras. And, we found the results pretty amazing. We tracked 19 speed cameras, the summonses they were giving out over a 3-month period from September to December of last year, and speeding dropped almost 59%. So that's hard data. We and between DOT and NYPD, we do track speeds at hot spots around the city. So we do actually look at the data. We can't track every speed of every car everywhere in New York City, but we particularly are trying to look at high crash corridors, and there's no question where we ramp up enforcement or we have the cameras, we see people slow down. I just want to echo what the mayor said, too, about, I think, how important the advocates and the families have been for just raising awareness around the city. I was actually just at an event with a bunch of my fellow city DOT commissioners from all around the country, and I don't think there's any other city that has the remarkable set of advocates and families who have brought such passion and commitment to the issue of safety on our roadways. So I think New York is really blessed in that way, and you really can see the results.
Staten Island is definitely a car-centric borough.
You could have asked a Bronx question just to be different. Could have really done something outside the box there.
But only one of the more than 50 redesigns that you guys are talking about today were on the island. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about why that is and just the philosophy behind that.
Yeah, and I guess I think this is a moment to talk about, although these redesigns are a big part of the work we're doing a lot of other things in terms of Vision Zero. As the mayor mentioned, increasing speed humps and school safety zones, signal timing. So admittedly, I think a lot of the improvements we made in Staten Island were along those fronts. It turns out that things like speed humps are becoming increasingly very popular in Staten Island. Fortunately, also, Staten Island is actually at the moment the safest borough with the lowest number of fatalities. So it's true, in following the data, we've done more of these actual street redesign projects in the other boroughs. But in the coming year, we're going to have a bunch of things we're doing in Staten Island. Bike lane on Clove Road. So we will not be ignoring Staten Island at all. Don't worry.
I'll ask the Bronx question.
There you go.
Do you have any data on how drivers are driving now? You said in general they're driving better, but do you have any data on East Tremont since this whole improvement went up?
Since this just went up in November, we usually like to take a little time to collect a certain amount of data. So I'll see if I can dig up what we have, but usually we let a project settle in but we do look at before and after data. So
Let's do I don't know if either of you want to speak to what you've seen.
Yeah.
Mr. Clark or Ms. Soren, you want to?
Hi. My name is Juan Clark, and I own Clarkson Signs on Tremont Avenue, and I'm at the corner store. I'm actually the store where the car actually went inside, and since I've been there, I have like a real clear view of the project that's been done since the accident, and yes, it has really slowed down considerably. I used to hear accidents all the time, screeching, ambulance all the time, and it has really considerably slowed down, and it's been great for the community. You can see the people now is not concerned about crossing the streets. They just be looking over their shoulders. Me, myself, I knew how to maneuver around the area, but it's been great, and I am grateful, that the city has took the time out to address the situation. I did scream from the top of my lungs for a long time, and it's been a blessing to know that this is becoming something that's going to take place in the whole city, because I know lives is very important. I lost my dad through a motorist, and it touches my heart just knowing that, this is being addressed.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Well done. And I think that point about having to maneuver, I think you used the right word. I mean, I think there's been some places in the city, and Queens Boulevard is obviously another example, where people had to sort of have a plan to get across the street, right? And that's what we're going to just use every tool we've got to end. We can't have people feeling they can't get across a street when it's time to get across the street successfully, and that's why these redesigns are so important. Yeah.
You mentioned that the Vision Zero is an interagency effort. I noticed Commissioner Bratton isn't here and hasn't been to most Vision Zero events, and Chief Chen hasn't spoken yet, so I had some questions hopefully for him.
Well, I would like to, I'm going to just, you were leading the witness, so I'll just say. Commissioner Bratton, before he became commissioner, you may remember, spoke at a transportation forum, I think it was NYU. And it was, as he and I were talking about the potential of him taking the job, it was very striking to me. The guy who was known for fighting, the traditional sense of what was public safety and fighting crime and terrorism, but yet had this real passion around addressing crashes. And it's something he thought was long overdue in terms of focus, because obviously the numbers were so astounding in terms of how many people we lost each year. So he, from the very beginning, was obviously been with us at a number of the kickoff events in this. But he, in all of our conversations, focuses on this as something that has become increasingly important to the NYPD. And Chief Chan, with the commissioner's support, has applied tremendous resources to it. So I just want to set the record straight. There's a lot of commitment there. But now, with that being said, Chief, step forward.
Could I follow up with my
Please.
So we're in the 45th precinct, and the precinct has issued one speeding ticket, less than one speeding ticket a day this year, and fewer than every other day it's issued a failure to yield ticket. Is that really enough? And there's no traffic enforcement as part of the academy curriculum. Is that really enough to see the changes you're hoping to see?
Okay, I'm going to backtrack on one of your first comment. In reference to Vision Zero and Commissioner Bratton, when I assigned me this position as Chief of Transportation, he pointed me in the right direction. And he gave me contacts in federal and state agencies, and also contacts in other police departments, including LAPD, Chicago, and things of that nature. Matter of fact, Commissioner Bratton has had meetings set up to meet with the TLC and also the OT Commissioner. So he's constantly updated, and we speak about the subject. We give briefings to the Commissioner in reference to what's going on in the city, fatalities, collisions, things of the nature. He has weekly staff meetings. So, again, the Commissioner's fingers are definitely in the pie of Vision Zero. So, and he's certainly supplied us with the manpower. We've increased the number of personnel assigned to highway, the equipment, radar equipment, the training that we've given to TLC. To our officers, we've increased the pool of people who are able to utilize the LiDAR radar sets and things of that nature. So he's actually he's fostered, he's mentored, he's made sure that Vision Zero is a priority in his administration. And we've gotten the support of the outside bureaus. While I'm covering Transportation Bureau, we have Patrol Bureau and other units, Legal Bureau and things of that nature. So again, he's 100%, so he may not physically be here today, but he's definitely, in terms of his support, he's been there with us. When we take a look at the what you mentioned about in the 4-5 precinct, overall, when we take a look at the New York City Police Department and including the Transportation Bureau, our officers are heading in the right direction. And I think our officers are the best officers in the world, and I'm proud to be a New York City police officer. So, again, I think that we had great strides in Vision Zero in 2014, and I expect the same in 2015.
Yeah.
Councilman Baca mentioned he wants a speed bump on every block. Now I like Jimmy.
You're leading the witness too. I didn't hear that.
I've seen 2 speed bumps on a block, and police and fire and EMS must go over this. Unlike traffic lights and stop signs, fire and EMS must come to an almost complete stop over these bumps. And I've been told by many members of EMS and fire department that emergency response times are going up. Can you tell us how much they're going up when they have to go over?
So I heard a couple different things. The first, I didn't hear from Councilmember Vaca, who I've known for a long time. Obviously said he knew a lot of people wanted speed bumps and they should be applied where appropriate. I'm going to be your lawyer. I'm your non-lawyer lawyer.
I thought you put a twist on one of these.
Yeah, a little twist there. Second, I'm going to help you with the logic here. Community, and this typically what happens, I know this from my time in the city council, communities ask for a street, a block, ask for it. There's a process you go through. Because it's a way of saving lives, it's a way of avoiding injury. Now, we care deeply about making sure our first responders can do their work. But I don't know a first responder who would not tell you if we could avoid the incident to begin with, that would be the optimal state of affairs. If we could avoid the car crash, if we could avoid the pedestrian being hit, to begin with, so the emergency vehicles wouldn't have to come. So let me finish. So the speed bumps, and Polly can talk about, and the chief can talk about the kind of considerations that go into the placement of them, are to stop the problem before it happens. Then you say, is there enforcement time impact? They can speak to the mechanics of how to make sure they mitigate that. But I think the important point here is we put those in after careful study to save lives to begin with.
And I will talk a bit about how we place them. And as the council member mentions, not a day goes by that I don't get a request for them. And we actually do think very carefully about where we put them. And we work closely with police and fire to make sure that we're not putting them on major emergency routes or major bus routes. We're really putting them usually on pretty small residential streets. So, you know, we also work very closely with community boards. So we try and be very thoughtful about where we place them. And in fact, in a lot of cases, I'm breaking hearts because we're not putting them in a particular site because we do want to make sure that emergency vehicles can get through.
Is there any reason, based on the work that's been accomplished so far, that you think you've achieved such a dramatic decrease, specifically in pedestrian fatalities, whereas I believe motorists are flat and bike fatalities actually went up somewhat significantly? Is there a reason for that difference, do you think?
Well, I would just say I think that we believe the composite impact is unquestionably because of the measures put in place. And by the way, because there were so many measures used simultaneously, this is part of what's so powerful about Vision Zero. You know, there's a whole TLC component to Vision Zero, which I think has been very, very powerful. There's enforcement, there's signage, there's education, there's speed cameras, there's speed bumps. So we believe when you see this kind of cumulative, focused approach, so many resources thrown in so quickly that's the overall reason. Now, if you say help understand why the subset pieces came out the way they did, Polly Trottenberg.
I mean, unfortunately, as great a year as we had, obviously our progress was not perfectly linear, and we are not happy about the increase in the number of cyclist fatalities. One fatality is too many, but that is a number we're taking a close look at and trying to do a diagnosis about what happened. And part of our plan for 2015 is going to be continue to build out safer bike infrastructure, including protected bike lanes. So we're never going to rest when it comes to making sure we're making each part of the system safer.
Just ask about what's the maintenance plan? When you look at your photos there, a lot of times the initial look, you couldn't see the lines on the roadways. So I drive a lot. There's been a couple of blocks where I didn't see the speed bump and my head goes into the ceiling of the car. Then I got to call Chief Chan. But what's the plan on making sure with the winter here plowing that we can see those lines? Because a lot of streets you've changed from 2 lanes to 1 lane, and you can't tell where you're driving sometimes.
Now, it is a huge challenge, and it's interesting. As I particularly learned, when you have a bad winter, as we did last year, it wreaks havoc on your roadway striping. And one challenge we do face is you can't do the striping when you're in the middle of the winter and it's cold because the reflective material doesn't stick very well and when it's snowing. But look, we have a very aggressive striping program, and we try and get all over the city. And obviously we look, if there are places where we need to come and do patch up and emergency work, we look to get 311 requests. This is an area where actually we work closely with the state and the federal government to make sure we have the funding we need to get the striping done. But admittedly, it's a challenge in the wintertime.
Now, just a quick perspective on this. Polly, you may have this at your fingertips. How many miles of roads do you cover?
Well, it's 6,000 miles. It's 20,000 lane miles. So we have an enormous roadway network.
Let's start with the 6,000 miles. So you could go to L.A. and back. So what New Yorkers can do to help, and I would urge everyone to include this in your coverage, is if someone sees on their block or somewhere an area where the striping isn't clear anymore, call 311. Let's get that on record so we can get that in the lineup to act on it, because you're absolutely right. That can cause a safety challenge, and we want to get ahead of it. Wait, you had one before. Well, come on. No. Wait your turn, brother. Everyone gets theirs first.
Do you plan on pursuing any further expansion of the speed camera program in Albany, or does the composition of the Senate make that a lost cause?
Well, first of all, I would say in terms of everything we're going to do in Albany this year and the legislative agenda, we're going to obviously have an announcement on that quite shortly. I'll be testifying in Albany, et cetera. So in terms of any announcements of our plans, we're making our final formulation of our plan, and we'll announce that shortly. Second, I think the composition of the Senate is not that different, let's be clear, than it was last time. It's just a change of a few seats. And even though it was a Republican-dominated Senate last time, we found we were able to get some very important work done. And we got a lot of support, in fact, on speed cameras is one example. So I remain optimistic on areas of safety in particular that we can find a real consensus. Anyone who has not had their question on topic before, you get yours. No, you've had one too. Look at that. Look at that. You tried to cheat on his place in line. Anyone who hasn't, no, we're going to do just on topic. Anyone who hasn't asked yet.
Mine's a general question.
On topic. Anyone who has not asked yet, going once, going twice, you're up. On topic.
Just was wondering if at any point in these new improvements, you're considering doing something at the Main Street intersection where 3-year-old Allison Liao was killed holding her grandmother's hand walking with the light. And the SUV driver got off with not even a summons. And the DMV judge actually let him go completely, even for the summons. And is one possibility there the barn stance? And is that a possibility in other places where you stop all traffic so people can walk? And does that have any, is there any political motivation behind it where you're putting any of these improvements?
Well, that's a bunch of questions. Let me try and tackle them. And first, look, you can hear from the sounds in the audience. I mean, that's an extraordinary case with Ali Liao and what happened, and obviously that it was caught on videotape. And we know now has become a discussion about how we handle the criminal justice side of something like that. When there is a crash like that, DOT, we immediately go out and survey the site. We take a quick look at whether our markings and signals are working. And first of all, we make sure that if there's anything we can do right away, we do that. And then, we take a longer look at some of these sites and whether, the long-term crash data means that we need to make bigger interventions there, or whether it's unfortunately just a one-time episode. But obviously, there's a real interplay with the criminal justice system, and we're still looking at what the facts of that case were.
So nothing's planned at this point? Then? Not at this point.
No, there is not a political motivation. It is a data motivation. We put the cameras, we put the other measures in place where we think the need is greatest. And obviously, that's why we say Queens Boulevard is going to get a lot of our attention, because it has been historically the most problematic place. On topic, last call. That's on topic, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was wondering if you guys had an estimate for last year for the speed cameras, the amount of money that those summonses brought in, or whether or not. And also, as a follow-up, what you guys would say to some folks who might feel that those speed cameras are just a ploy to get revenue for the city.
I will happily address that, because that's not accurate, but you start.
All right. I actually have not the estimate, the actual number. Revenue taken in from the speed cameras in 2014 was $16.96 million. And we issued about 445,000 speed-related summonses. Although, again, even in the last few months of the program, as I mentioned, at every location, the 19 locations we were tracking, the number of summonses fell by almost 60%. So people got the message pretty quickly, as it turns out.
And that's the second part. Thank you. That's the second part of the answer, which is we want less business. We would love to get less revenue, because we are trying to make this a culture change. That's why all the education and the holisticness of the approach is why I'm really proud of what these agencies have done, because they've made it sort of surround sound. You see so many things changing simultaneously, all with the same vision. It has a name. All of our colleagues in the advocacy groups and community groups and elected officials, everyone's getting the same message out, and you see it in word and in deed, which means behavior is changing rapidly, which means you're going to see less speeding and fewer tickets. We want people to not get tickets because we want them to not speed. But in the meantime, they will understand there are consequences if they do. On topic, yes.
Following up on Allison Liao's case, the Liao family has asked for reforms at the New York State DMV and from the city's district attorneys. Do you have a message either to the DMV or the DAs when it comes to Vision Zero and justice for traffic violence victims?
I think there's been some real progress made, certainly some legislation that passed the City Council, for example, to get to real consequences for motorists who do this to other people. So my message to everyone, the state government, the DAs, everyone, is we all have to work in concert to create an atmosphere where people don't speed, don't break the law, don't drive recklessly, and if they do, that there will be real and consistent consequences. Okay, we are going to off topic.
Yes.
updates on municipal ID cards. I know you guys switched to the appointment-only process yesterday. This morning, the website was down. I was wondering if any information or update on that. And are you concerned this could be such situations similar to the Obamacare rollout with healthcare.gov, where the system is sort of unprepared for the level of demand that you guys are seeing?
No. It's. I don't think I could find a better case of apples and oranges. This is a very, very important initiative that will ultimately, I think, reach tens of thousands and over time probably hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers. But the demand we saw on the first day was in the thousands. It wasn't like healthcare.gov where you had to deal with millions and millions of people. We continue to have the locations available. I think it was 17 locations around the city where people can go in person at the libraries, make an appointment right there, get their card processed and sent to them within 2 weeks. We're going to fix the website situation. Again, this was a high demand dynamic. That's a good thing. But we're going to fix that situation. That's going to be back up and running soon. But, we engineered this approach to be very much in concert with grassroots organizations, houses of worship, obviously our libraries and other agencies that are on the ground in neighborhoods. So that's going to be an easy way of getting to lots and lots of people, even as we're fixing the website.
Mayor, about this meeting yesterday, with PBA and with Pat Lynch, I wanted to see what your reaction.
I'm sorry. Explain what you're referring to.
The union meeting yesterday, the PBA meeting, and Pat Lynch was there, and several officers were angry with.
Oh, the one they had their own PBA meeting. Okay.
Yeah, their own PBA, not the one that you all had. I wanted to see what your reaction to it was, given the difficulties that you've had the last couple of weeks talking with Pat and other people from the PBA, but also specifically the complaint of some of those officers there, from what we've heard, was we don't want an apology from you. We want things like vests, better protection, a contract, et cetera, et cetera.
So first, as to the question of what happens inside any union, I think a union with thousands and thousands of members, I think in the case of PBA between 10 and 20,000 members, is going to have a diversity of opinions within it, and people will let their voices be heard. That's not surprising. In terms of what we're hearing in that discussion, as I understand it, those officers are raising the question of officer safety, and I think that's where this discussion needs to focus. We've said from the beginning the reforms we're making have the double impact of making communities safer and officers safer. We said this repeatedly in 2013 and 2014, that if you bring police and community closer together, everyone's safer. The information flows, the partnership develops, and everyone's safer, including our officers. But I think what we're hearing from officers all over the city is there are other things that they would like addressed. And I think that's fair. And we want to, one by one, go through those items and find out what we can do to make their quality of work life better, and certainly to address anything that involves our safety. That's by definition. I have often said, despite all the challenges that this city went through in recent weeks because of real tragedies and real pain, that our police officers not only protect us, but they are working men and women. The vision I laid out in 2013 was about how we can uplift the lives of working men and women. And they have a lot of valid issues that need to be addressed. And this administration will systematically, with Commissioner Bratton and his leadership team, we will address those issues. So everything that's been put on the table there, vests, vehicles, those are all valid issues that we want to find solutions on.
Did you find any consolation in the fact that there are some officers, many officers out there, who are saying, we don't really want an apology from you?
Again, I think it's a very diverse workforce in every sense. I understand in some of the challenges we face that sort of rhetoric's been intense, and some of the analyses have tried to stereotype everyone involved. But in fact, it's a big, diverse police force with lots of different viewpoints. Lots of people have all their own individual histories, their own individual views. Doesn't surprise me at all that more and more officers would offer different views of what needs to be done. I think where there is an emerging consensus is that we have to focus on officer safety as part of the package of reforms that we are making in the city to make everyone safer. Now, I'll just take this occasion to say, what I think our officers also need to hear, rightfully, is that while we all, of course, respect and believe in our U.S. Constitution that guarantees the right to free speech, that all of us here, and I want to put myself there first, find any effort to say negative and derogatory things about our officers as unacceptable. That it's different if you say there's some policies you want to change, some strategies you want to change. That's a fair discussion. But for example, we've got some protests that will start as early as tomorrow. And the groups involved in those protests scheduled for tomorrow have a long history of, unfortunately, allowing some of their members to say really inappropriate, reprehensible things about our police officers. Things I think are actually quite sick. Anything that suggests violence towards police. They may have a constitutional right to chant their chants, but they're wrong. And they're denigrating any notion of calling for reform. Now, I've said many times the vast majority of protesters, from everything I've seen, are peaceful protesters who respect the police but want to see a change in policies. But there is a small group that has consistently used absolutely unacceptable, reprehensible language towards officers. They may have a constitutional right to do it, but they should stop doing it. And obviously, I said this also after the incident of the Brooklyn Bridge. Any protester who knows of any effort to harm, to actually not just say nasty words, but to physically harm a police officer, must report that to the police immediately and must intervene to stop it. Anyone who's serious about the cause they purport to believe in has to be part of the solution of stopping anyone who would in any way, shape, or form promote violence towards our police. So I think that message has to get out. I think the many, many decent people who are protesting have to make their voices heard about stopping any of those unacceptable instances of the wrong language and obviously anything that might cause violence. And we got to get on to the work, the practical work of examining what we can do to help increase the safety of our officers. Yeah.
Following up on that, in addition to the dispute yesterday, apparently only a very small percentage, about 4% of officers ended up signing the declaration telling you not to go to their funerals. Taking those two things together, does it make you think at all that, there might not be as much opposition? Do you take any sort of comfort or conclusion from that the stuff the unions are saying may not be representative of other officers?
Well, I think I've separated a long time ago some of the specific things some of the union leaders have said from what is felt by the rank and file. This wouldn't be the first case where that is true. I think you always have to see the difference between the unions and union leadership in any situation versus the rank and file. And again, this is a huge police force with a lot of diversity of opinion within it. But I think some of the issues that have been raised in the last weeks are real issues. Again, these safety issues are real issues and need to be addressed, and we're going to be very systematic about addressing them. So I guess I would answer you by saying, and I said this publicly in a lot of ways before, I always assumed there was a real diversity of opinion. And I think it is more on display now. But what's most important is that we in government listen to those opinions and figure out what we can do about the real valid issues that come up. There's going to be emotion, there's going to be rhetoric, there's going to be some things said that shouldn't be said. But I think underneath that there are some real issues that we can address.
Last night on the Charlie Rose show, Commissioner Bratton said that the well was poisoned between you and the police unions when your wife hired, as he put it, the chief of staff or something in the form of Rachel Northinger. I was wondering if you agree with that assessment.
I think, first of all, I'm going to pretty scrupulously say I'm not going to do punditry or post-game analysis in terms of the blow-by-blow of the year 2014. I think the overall reality of 2014 is that we drove crime down very substantially, and the NYPD did a great job, and we made real progress on reform, which is why 10 days ago or whatever it was, we had the press conference laying out the numbers for the year. I couldn't have been more proud because we had extraordinary progress in fighting crime mixed with a substantial reduction in unnecessary stops, mixed with a substantial reduction in marijuana arrests, and all those things were trending in the right direction together, which proved the core thesis of what we said in 2013. So to me, that's the big story of 2014. If you say, did one step along the way or another lead to misunderstanding, by definition, some misunderstandings happen along the way. But I'm committed to communicating consistently with our officers, to understanding what we can do better. But we're also going to continue the reforms we started because that's what this city needs, and it will make everyone safer in the end.
If I could just follow up
Yeah.
respectfully, your police commissioner went on TV last night and did exactly that. He analyzed 2014.
Well, he has a right to offer his view of things. And again, I have such immense respect for Commissioner Bratton. I literally don't have words for it. We talk constantly. We share a very, very strong vision for where this city has to go, and we are united. He can go on a TV show and offer an analysis if he wants to. That's fine. That's his right. But the big picture here is we're unified in terms of the direction we want to go in. Andrew.
Mayor, the Teamsters have authorized a strike at Hunts Point Market, which could start as soon as Friday. How concerned are you about this possibility, and are you prepared to step in and talk to the side?
Look, we obviously take it very seriously. Hunts Point is crucial to this city. There's been rumors of this possibility before, and some good work was done to ensure harmony and move forward. So we'll certainly do anything it will take to help keep moving things forward, and I'm hopeful. Juliet.
Yes, Mayor. The governor appears to be considering a directive or legislation that would allow, in some cases, the opening of grand jury minutes when it comes to police confrontations. Your thoughts on that? Do you think that's necessarily a good idea?
I'm not a lawyer, and I certainly have not seen the specifics of his proposal. I broadly believe transparency is helpful because there's so much misinformation that sometimes just having the actual record is helpful, but I can't comment until I see the specifics.
Do you think something like the Eric Garner case, where there's been such controversy, that it would be a good idea?
Again, my view is transparency is a broad value, makes sense in these cases. I don't know the intricacies of the grand jury process. I don't know some of the, positives and negatives of that kind of release information. My broad view is in favor of transparency. Rich.
Mr. Mayor, your press office yesterday put out a statement saying that you would veto the current writing
Yep.
of the chokehold legislation. Could you outline your objections to it?
Sure.
And it was also seen as a sort of a rapprochement to the police department as well. Can you?
Well, I had said many times over the last weeks that I was uncomfortable with that bill as written, and in fact I illustrated why, and you can go back and check the public record of that, because we are adamant about making sure the NYPD rules and regulations are followed, which prohibit the use of chokeholds in any normal interaction between police and community. That couldn't be clearer. Commissioner Bratton's made that clear. In fact, those chokehold prohibitions go back almost 30 years in this city. But I don't believe that enacting a law which would make it a criminal offense to utilize a chokehold is appropriate, because I believe there are exceptional situations in which the life of an officer may be at stake. Literally, and Commissioner Bratton's laid this out to you as well, one officer and one perpetrator in a death struggle. And in that instance, the officer has a right to use any and all tools he can to save his life. So I think the route of passing a law is a mistake. Said it many, many times. And the other day, the question was put, obviously we've seen reporting on this. Would that lead me to a veto? As written, yes, I would veto that bill. Now, if the council comes back with a different view or a different bill, we will review it and we'll consider it. But I'm not going to create a situation where an officer is in that life and death struggle, thank God survives, and then faces criminal charges. That's unacceptable.
Could I just follow up
Please.
for a second? There are 29 sponsors on this bill, and I think it takes 34 to override.
Mm-hmm.
Are you at all concerned about something along those lines taking place?
So again, I don't do punditry for a living, but I can tell you that when you're at the beginning of a legislative process, there's a lot to play out. I think the concern I have, and the concern Commissioner Bratton has, will be heard and respected by council members. And I think it will cause some of them to think a little more deeply, and it might cause a very different bill to come forward or some other outcome. So I think you can't judge the end point from the starting point. But I want my colleagues in government who are in the City Council to know my view. They know I'm committed to reform, and they know I'm committed to a very different relationship between police and community. But this is a case where I think the use of a law would actually create an unfair situation.
The Wall Street Journal just reported that yesterday Governor Cuomo met with some of the police union leaders. What role do you think he should be playing in this dispute?
I know the governor has a long-standing relationship with some of those leaders, and some of the issues he's working on the state level. Obviously, it's pertinent to talk to a lot of different constituencies about. So I think it's a classic division of labor when it comes to state law and things that are a purview of the state government. That's what the governor will obviously focus on. When it comes to the day-to-day work of the city government in New York City, that's what I'll focus on.
Just following up on that, two questions. One, what are your thoughts on Governor Cuomo potentially swooping in and inserting himself in this conflict with the police department? And two, as you know, there's been a lot of debate about whether or not you should apologize, including, I guess, folks inside the police department. But some folks are saying or looking for some sort of acknowledgement that there have been some missteps. Is that something that, as you look back at this, that you're willing to acknowledge that there may have been some missteps? Or
I think the issue is, first of all, the things that I have said that I believe are what I believe. And you can't apologize for your fundamental beliefs. I think they've been warped and misinterpreted many times over. But, if you just look at the facts, including some of the things that raised some criticism but had been said many times before previously, including throughout 2013, which always raises a question for me. You said something over and over again on public record, and a group does not criticize it and then suddenly criticizes it later. It always makes me question what the motivation is for the criticism. But the things that I have said were based on my beliefs. The truth is I know it. In terms of can we do a better job communicating and listening and deepening an understanding of what our officers need, yes. And I think to the point earlier, if a lot of officers are saying the things we're concerned about are very material, the things that we think will add to our safety, the things that affect their day-to-day life and their work, I think those are really valid topics. And it's my obligation to not only hear, but then come back and say, here's what we think we can do about it. So that's what I'm going to focus on. And I think on the other questions, I said it already. I think there's an obvious division of labor. And Commissioner Bratt and I have both made clear that we have maintained ongoing discussions with the police unions. We will continue to. And we think that's the path forward.
Let's do one or two more, guys.
Legionnaire's disease here in the Bronx, any worry that it's going to spread? Any steps to make sure it doesn't?
Well, Department of Health obviously is on top of this. And thank God this is a disease that can be addressed very readily. And so we're very hopeful that this situation at Co-op City can be solved quickly.
One more thing, sorry. We've got complaints from people who've been calling 311 about the municipal ID cards, that people are unhelpful, the operators are unhelpful, they don't have any information. Have you heard any complaints like this?
This is the first I'm hearing, but we will certainly, if that's the case, I want to fix it. So we will follow up on that immediately. But what I saw, and this was one place, obviously, at the Flushing Library, was so striking to me because it was huge lines of people, but also, the facility there to have multiple languages available on site, and then anybody who speaks a different language that they can get a translator on the phone essentially instantaneously. So I can say in terms of the in-person delivery of services, it's quite impressive. But if 311 is in any way insufficient as we start out here, we'll certainly fix that.
Last call, guys.
What was your reaction when you heard Mitt Romney was considering running for president again?
Don't say that.
Thank you, Counselor. Tish is a lawyer. I'm not. I was surprised. I don't know if 3 times is a charm.
Mr. Mayor, just wondering when the last time you spoke to Al Sharpton was, whether you've discussed any of the tensions with the police department with him, and whether that tension has had any impact on your relationship with him.
I've known him many years. we speak with some regularity, and these are big, complicated issues. They've been with us for a long time. We'll be working on them for a long time to resolve them. But again, even though I understand that you guys have to look at the issue of the moment or the controversy of the moment, I remain very hopeful that the people of this city want us to bring police and community together. They want all voices heard in that process. And I have sat with people across the spectrum. And that is part of how you make change, to listen to all voices and then figure out a way forward. And we will find that way forward. Thank you.